Okay. Hello, everyone, once again, and welcome to today's session. My name is Ella from Untitled Kingdom. We are a software and product development company that focuses on Femtech, digital health, and IoT projects. Today, just in a minute, Sara, a product owner with over 7 years of experience, is going to present her thoughts and tips about improving Femtech, optimize your product to women's needs. Hi, Sara.
Hi,
Just
everyone.
a little housekeeping before we get started. If you have any questions during this presentation, please type them into Q&A section in your Zoom control panel. I will bring them up during the presentation and we will have some time for answers. And of course, recorded version of this webinar will be available. Okay, so let's get started. Sara, the stage is yours.
Sorry, I have issues with unmuting my microphone. So hello, everyone. I'm really glad you all joined us here. As you know, today's subject is improving Femtech and optimizing products to women's needs. Maybe just before we start, as Ella said, please remember to ask any questions in the QA section. Also, if you have any questions during the webinar, please feel free to ask them at any time. We'll stop at some points during the presentation, so I will try to answer all your questions. We don't have to leave them for the end of presentation. Okay, let's start. Whether you already have a product or you're creating one, you probably know that there are always ways to improve. And there is no such point in creating, especially digital products, but I believe this is true for any kind of product or a service, that it's never done and it's never really perfect. The main problem that we have when we're trying to improve products is which way we actually need to optimize. So there are always a lot of ways, so we can either scale it up or make better designs or maybe improve the communication. So how do we find an answer to what choices we need to make, to what decisions we need to make? Again, technical issues. Okay. So you may be wondering if there is one way that works for all of the products, and if I'm going to reveal it today. And unfortunately, I would say there is no one way of improving all the products, but you're probably aware of that. There are, although, ways to understand the users better and to understand what they need and how to give it to them, to not just make a good product that is somewhere out on the market, but to make your product your user's favorite product. And that's important not just for your business, but also for getting more ways to improving your product. If you create a relation with your users, if they become your advocates, it's going to be a lot easier for you to get answers from them, to get more ways that you can improve. And regarding the ways that I want to discuss today, most of them can actually be applied to any product and service as well. So there are some general rules of improving, of optimizing products. And there might be another question about how is Femtech different? So why are we talking about Femtech today? Possibly the good product is just a good product, right? But there are some specific issues that are a bit more important for Femtech products. So today I want to discuss those two subjects. First of all, the general ways of improving products. And second of all, the issues that are specific to Femtech. And I hope that combining those two ways of thinking about improving your product will help you create something that that your users will love. I think I've seen there's some question, so maybe I can stop quickly here, and Ella, if you could let me know what the
Yes.
question is. Thanks.
Yes, that's right. We have one question. It's a good question for the beginning of this webinar. When and how to measure the moment when the product is already its best version? When does this time of constant improvement end?
It never ends. Creating products, creating business in any way is a constant improvement. And there is no point where product is perfect. It never is. There will be some points where product is fitting the market perfectly, and you're giving your users perfect features that they actually need at this point. But times change and user needs change, especially in digital world. It happens very, very quickly. So even if you have something that seems perfect for the moment, probably very soon it will need some kind of improvements. So yeah, never. But that's all.
Okay.
Okay. So let's start with who you are. It may seem like a simple question, but I would say it's the most important question that you should ask yourself first before improving your product. So instead of, I always say that you should start with the people and with users, but the truth is that if you already have a product or you're already creating one, you should first be sure who you are and what your users can expect from you. So before you start asking users any questions, you should answer yourself, what is your core? So I really like the idea of elevator pitch, which shouldn't be longer than 30 seconds, where you should be able to describe yourself and your value in just a couple of words. And I believe that until you have it very, very clear and you just agree with your elevator pitch and you feel that this is exactly explaining who you are, you can't really find a way to improve. Because if you narrow it down to who you are and what you want to give to the people around you, to your users, you will be able also to find things that are related to it. Otherwise, everything will be interesting. Everything will seem like something you can do. So if you're creating an app for women who are expecting a child, for example, and if you are not sure what you're doing and what is the value, because there are, of course, several products for pregnant women and they offer different values. But if it's just this huge, huge group of pregnant women, you can find millions of ways to improve. But if you know exactly, and if you really, really narrow it down to explain to your users and first of all to yourself what you're doing and what you're offering, it's going to be easier to choose those ways that are related to who you are exactly. So for example, in case of an application for expecting mothers, if what you're doing is something that should lead to a better delivery, then think what is related to the actual delivery. Maybe you don't have to think about everything that happens after the pregnancy. Maybe you don't have to think about fertility for the future or anything like that. Maybe you should just focus on delivery, on the delivery partner, for example, on preparing a mother to for this moment exactly. And all the ways to improve should always reflect who you really are. Yeah, just one more thing. I said here that it's about knowing your core and always building around your core. So the next thing are actually your users. So who are they? Probably when you were starting to create your product, starting to think about your product, you had in mind your target group. And if you created a product for a target group, even if it was perfectly fitted for this exactly group, it's possible that after time, the group of actual users changed a little. And the people who are using your application right now or your product, I'm just saying application, but it doesn't mean that it's only for the applications. So people who are using your product or a service might have changed, either because the way you communicated your product spoke to a wider group of users and they also wanted to use it, and maybe you didn't expect it. And maybe it's because the users themselves changed. If it was a product for teenagers, for example, over the years they're growing, they're changing their needs, their expectations, and you can still improve for those users. But every once in a while, more often than not, you should try to talk to your users, to know them, especially with the products that are expected to be used for longer periods of time. Like, for example, period trackers. Most of the girls start using them when they're teenagers, when they first get their period, or after a while of having their period, but they don't stay teenagers forever. And probably this core target group that you have in your product is shifting slowly. So if you get to know them really well, if you try to either create or find a community where your users are and get to know them better, you will be able to ask them better questions. And I will talk a little bit more about what questions to ask and how to ask them. But most definitely the important part here is to ask the right people. And if you have the product, you already have the users. So it's very simple to just ask them. Of course, you can get out of the box and ask other people as well, but your users are the best source of knowledge for you. You just have to know who they are exactly. We have one more question.
Yes, great question here. What methods or tools do you recommend to make a good elevator pitch? What questions to ask to come to this?
It's a pretty difficult question. I would say that it's a great question as well, but I would say that it's very individual. So what works for me, for example, is finding words that describe well what I'm trying to describe at this moment. And from those words to pick those that are most relevant. And once I have the main words for the elevator pitch, I can build around them to create them, to create sentences that will actually capture everything. But the main idea behind elevator pitch is just to, I'm not sure how to say it. Yeah, I guess it's to capture exactly what you do in a very, very short sentences or even one sentence. So I would say just you can write an essay about it and then cut it down to the most important thing that you were trying to say.
Okay.
One more question before we move on.
Okay, another question. Is there a best way how to communicate with the users about their needs before starting the project or a new feature?
I will talk about it a little bit more right now. So about asking the right questions. It also depends from the product. I would say that the best way of asking questions is to know why you're asking a question. Like if we ask people a very open question and we don't really know what was the reason behind this question, we're not going to be able to use the answer at all. It's just going to make the final picture very, very messy, and we're not going to be able to pick anything from it. But if we first, and actually I can move the screen because this is exactly about that. So asking the right questions. I think that before tests, and it doesn't matter if you have a product and you have your users already using it and you have easy access to them, or you're creating a new product and you are trying to get some information from, for example, groups on Facebook or just your friends. If you start asking them questions without any hypothesis and without knowing what is your goal in getting those answers, you're just going to get a lot of different questions, and getting again to the core of those answers will be very, very difficult. So asking specific questions, and I'm not saying that it has to be a closed question with A, B, C, D. It might be an open question. In some cases, it's a lot better because it gives your users or people who you're talking to currently, it gives them a bit more opportunity to give you the answers that you weren't expecting. So definitely leave as much space for creativity, for like open answers as possible, but have a hypothesis. Just be sure what you're trying to test, be sure what you're trying to get answers to. So if you ask me, for example, what do I need as a woman? I'm a target for Femtech product. I would say 10 different things, and Ella will say 10 completely different things. So those, like, you can get those answers and probably you will be able to figure something out from that, but not really for a new feature. And especially if you ask questions like, for example, if we are already users of your product, you ask us, what do we like in, like, outside of your product completely, just generally. So I will say, I love my dog. Ella will say she loves her cats. Someone will say they love their kids or job or walking around the woods. It's great to have this information and to get, as I said before, to get to know your users, but it won't give you valuable information for your product, of course. But if you already know what product you're creating, and if you already know who your users are, and then you just want to make a decision whether you should improve your product. For example, the product for period tracking. Sorry for using this example over and over again, but it's just a very simple and nice example of a Femtech product with a lot of variations on the market. So you can either go in a way of like creating environment for learning about hormones, how they work, how they influence our daily life, and so on. And this is one way of improving, to give more insight into how users feel, how women may or may not react to their hormones during the monthly cycle. But you can also go in a way of fertility, for example, and tracking fertility, so not just period. This is both based on the data that your users can share with you. Both are great ways of improving the product. But if you want to make a decision, answers that are about our cats and dogs will not give you any answer, not give you any information which way to go. But if you get a bit more information, for example, what is important to your user regarding period tracking, why are they doing it? They might do it because they want to know how they will feel in the next couple of days, or plan their time, plan their vacation, and so on. Or they might be doing this because they're using natural methods of tracking their fertility and what days they can have sex and what days they shouldn't have sex. So this will give you answers if you have the hypothesis already and if you know what is the goal of asking those questions. So I hope I answered the question, and also shared my insights here about asking the right questions. As I said, it's not a tip that it always works the same for everyone. It's a general rule to just change the approach, and instead of creating tests and clinical trials just because they should be done, to first of all think why we're doing it and what we want to achieve with those. Okay, so now about understanding the answers. It often happens that you get an answer from a user that you either think that is not relevant to your product at all, or you try to implement it just the way that users suggested. And the truth is that if you asked people 20 years ago if they needed a page with every detailed information about their friends, they would probably say no. But now billions of people are actually using Facebook and they are enjoying it. If you asked if people will and need to use an application that puts filters on photos, they would probably say, yeah, maybe, nothing necessary. But now Instagram is a huge product, or recording short videos where you're pretending to sing a song. I'm pretty sure that users would say no, not at all. But then again, TikTok is working and is a pretty huge application right now. So what people say is extremely important, but you always have to think what they actually mean. We have to understand that people are not in our heads and they do not know how we imagine what we're trying to build, what we're trying to create. So on one hand, people sometimes will tell you that they do not need something or that they do need something. And the idea is to try to, again, as always, get to the core of their answer. So what they actually need. If a person says that they need, I don't know, a way to contact their physician, for example, to be able to just get on their phone and easily access their physician, to talk to him, to ask him any questions that they have. You can, of course, start creating a feature in your application that gives them this kind of access. You can use the phone, you can use messages, but what need is actually behind the need that they shared with you? It might be a need of getting quick access to very simple information. Maybe the easy way to solve it is at least the first step to do it. So maybe it's not really the need in the form of the feature, because we are all familiar with technology. We are all familiar with applications. And a lot of us think that we need something specific, and we talk about it to creators like we need a specific feature from them. But the truth is that behind that, we actually need solution. We have a problem and we need solution. And sometimes the solution is very, very simple and users will be a lot more happy with it. But you just have to listen and understand and try to get the essence of what your users are trying to tell you. So try not to treat answers as the exact, maybe not data. I'm again not sure what word would be best here, but try not to treat them as something that you have to straight away implement, and also not something that you should ignore because it's not on this, not the subject. If you see that before I was talking about cats and dogs and kids and jobs and all that, it might not be relevant when creating a new feature or trying to optimize your product. But again, might be relevant to know your users better and see some patterns, what answers they give you to questions that are not specific. And I'm not encouraging you to ask those questions unless you have a very good relation with your users and you can ask them about it in the application, for example. If you have the forum, then yes, use it by all means. But if you only have access during tests, for example, then you do have to have hypotheses, but you have to analyze the answers and see what's behind them. We have 2 more questions.
Yes, we have very awesome questions here. The first one, how do you find the right people to ask you questions?
To ask you questions, I believe that was to ask questions.
Yes,
so I will answer.
I hope so.
Yeah, I think so. Sorry if I'm not getting the question right, but regarding finding people to ask them questions, it also depends from the product that we're building. If it's a product for pregnant women, we need to narrow it down to what type of pregnant women we want to create a product for, so what problem we want to solve, and then we need to find people who have this problem. Currently, it's pretty simple because if you ask a question in Google, you will probably find some kind of forum that this subject is related to, or you will find a group on Facebook where those people are. So the easiest way, I would say, is to look on the internet. But I also believe that before asking yourself where to find people to ask questions to, or who are the right people to ask for information about your product, is to figure out how you can create a product that actually answers your needs or people from your closest environment. Is it in any way answering to their needs? Then you will have a lot more information than you can get on the internet or get from the user groups for clinical trials. So usually when we're trying to solve our problem or problem of our sister, mother, child, the end product is a lot better because we have all the insights, we have everything that is related to it. And it's also easier to focus then and not make mistakes of creating features that are not relevant and not needed by the user. And in the end, annoying. Okay, another question.
Okay, what are your ways to ensure in your daily routine that you are going to the right direction and have the right hypothesis? Any advice on how often do you pause and think about it?
So again, like with every answer, I have to say it depends on what feature we're working on currently. If it's a big feature, it's impossible to stop and think about it every single day. We have to do something. We have to do something simple, something small, push it out to the people and ask them about their opinions or check the analytics. If we have a lot of users, of course, there is no point in checking analytics if we only have 100 or 50 people using it. But if those are small things that we can iterate after a couple of days, then at every single point where we can iterate, we should stop and think. It's a constant process. It's not something that you can, okay, so for this feature, we will take a month before iterating, and for this feature, we will take 2 days. It doesn't work like that. First, if you sense that there's something wrong or you're not sure about something, you just go out and ask, even if this is not your target group, even if it's just a friend that is not in the target group but is familiar with phones or is in target group in a different way. So it's a friend that is not currently pregnant but is, for example, trying to get pregnant, or it's even a male friend who is great with user experience design but he's not a target group. It's still worth to ask questions and get the answers if you think about the essence of the answer, about what people are actually trying to tell you. So yeah, it depends on what you're trying to iterate, but I would say as often as possible.
Okay, we don't have questions, so let's jump into the presentation.
Okay, so next step is analytics. We all hear all the time that analytics is extremely important and we need to use it. We need to always track everything. But I would say it's like, of course, analytics is very, very important, but I wouldn't say that tracking everything is a good idea. So just like with asking questions to your users, what's most important is knowing what you're looking for. And tracking everything usually makes it messy and gives you answers that it's impossible to analyze. And of course, you might have a data scientist on your team, or maybe you're a data scientist yourself. And you think that the more data, the better, because after getting the data, then you will find the patterns and answers in it. But it usually doesn't work this way. So I would suggest to first think what we're trying to learn from analytics, and then try to create flows in our analytics program and gather the events that are interesting to us, but only after we answer ourselves what for. And this has actually two sides. First of all, The more data we get, the more difficult it is to find answers in it. So we need to narrow it down a little. And I'm not saying to ignore data. Data is always important, but to do it with some kind of plan, with some kind of hypothesis. The second issue here is that especially in digital health and femtech products or any sex-related products, tracking data is not very comfortable for the users. So try to ask yourself if you really have to track this, or maybe you don't have to. Maybe you don't have to relate the information you're tracking to the user itself. Users, especially with health, but not only with that, need to trust the product. And if they see that you're asking for data that don't serve them any purpose, they're not going to trust your product. And there's no reason for track something if you can't really explain why you're trying to track it. So giving users a specific information about the purpose of tracking the data and showing them what kind of data you're tracking, why you're tracking it, and how you're going to use it is extremely important. There's also an issue of using data and analytics inside the application. A lot of products here, I use the example of Apple Health, but as you know, a lot of femtech products are using analytics. It's interesting to the users. We love to see how we're performing, not just in sports, but in our health as well, or for any kind of fertility apps or period apps. This is pretty important to see the analytics. So now imagine you're tracking everything and you're putting in the application everything. It wouldn't serve any purpose to the user, and you probably wouldn't make this decision to put inside your application for like the user interface to put all the data. You put it there selected first. So you think what's important to the user, what you need to show them, what they might be interested in. So do the same thing on your side. First think what you're interested in, what those information can give you, this information can give you, and then try to track it. But generally, it's extremely important, especially with products related to any health or any personal issues, to keep the data secure and to explain to the user why you're tracking it. And if you cannot track the personal data, that would be perfect. Usually what you need is just general information that 70% of users are doing this and 30% of users are not doing this. You don't really need to know that a specific person did something or didn't do something. Okay, so about making decisions. So before we move on to femtech specific issues, we talked about asking questions, about understanding the answers, about asking yourself who you are and who your users are. But how does it really influence the decisions you make? You might get very specific answers. You might get very different answers from each user. So how you should use it to make decisions? I would say that the core here, the most important issue is first staying true to yourself. If the suggestions of users, if information you get is not really in line with what you're creating, first try to get the information that is more relevant to your product from the answers you got. But second, sometimes it's worth it to just drop some kind of idea and try to optimize in a different way than blindly follow suggestions. So I think that the most important thing here is to analyze what users told you and how you can do it to keep it in line with your product. If you can't do it, if it's completely against your product, maybe create another product, maybe do something else with this information. But I think that it's pretty important to keep everything in the product, inside of a product, consistent with the essence of the product. And the second thing is keeping it simple. So you can get information that people would love to have, artificial intelligence driven suggestions for their mood. It might be a great idea, but if it's not simple to create it, if it requires very advanced technology and maybe something that is not even possible for now, then try to imagine how you could do it simple. Usually, if you want to build something, there are already some ways to do it in a simple way. You just have to find it. So users, not just users, you can get those suggestions from consultants, from investors, will give you some ideas that might seem great at the beginning, but what you should do with them is, first of all, of course, try to see how relevant are they to your product. And second of all, just always keep it simple, especially at the very beginning. So if you want to create a feature that you believe will optimize your product, first try to deliver it in the most simple way possible, even if it's using a phone call to a user to remind him about something, or her in this case. So just keeping it simple, and if it works, if you test it and users are happy with it, maybe not with a form, but general idea, then try to push it to make it a bit more complicated. But on the very beginning, keeping it simple. So all the answers you get from your users, from the analytics, from all the questions you can ask yourselves when trying to optimize. First, is it something relevant to your product and to you and what you believe in? Second, is it simple to do? So those would be my main advices here in making decisions. So about the second subject, I was telling you at the beginning that we have two subjects here. First are the general rules of improving the products, and second is Femtech specific issues. So is Femtech different? We often get the question, why are we talking about Femtech if those are like rules of thumb for every kind of digital product? I agree that most of the ways of improving products in general work as well for the Femtech products. But Femtech is pretty specific. Otherwise, it wouldn't get a separate name. So there are some issues that you need to focus more on when creating a Femtech product. And not just because it's a different group of users than general group of users, or just teenagers, or just people with some kind of other issue that is not gender specific. What's interesting in applications or any other Femtech products is that in different products, users expect everything to work for everything, I would say. So one solution would fit all. I'm not saying that users actually think a lot about it, but they expect that if they get a product, they can also give it to their friend who has a similar issue, for example, and it would work the same way. In Femtech products, it's a lot more important to personalize the products. First of all, we have very different experiences. It's not like all the women, even though it's a huge group of users, huge target group. If you narrow it down, you will see that every issue might be experienced in a completely different way by different women. And if we talk about cycles, for example, they last for different periods of time. They have different effects on the body, on the mind, on our mood, and all that. And without personalization, a Femtech product is difficult to build in a way that will work for anyone, pretty much. If we try to create something that works for all pregnant women or all women with periods, it will probably, I'm not saying that it will definitely fail, but it won't fit women perfectly. If you take a look at the products that are on top right now in Femtech, the famous products that are considered good, they are usually personalized. They are tailored for the experience. And then again, on those experiences, if you personalize the application, you can build even better optimization of the product. So on one hand, you get information for the personalization from the users, the way they use the product, the way what they're tracking in the product. You can use it to improve the product, because you see that, for example, those who use it on a daily basis get a lot better results in the end than those who use it weekly. So you can rebuild the product a little bit to make them come back more often to the product and get better results in the end. Because just saying, like if you tell your users, do it every day, it will work better, it probably won't work this way. You have to give them a reason to do it every day, and this reason needs to be quick. And then again, you can build the different experiences inside the product based on this data. So not just create improvements, general improvements to the product, but also create personalized experience based on this information. And I see that we have more questions.
Yes, very interesting questions. The first one, do you have an example from your experience that you are proud of that was related to simplifying the data rather than complicating it?
So to answer this question, I wouldn't want to shuffle with any names here, but from my experience, every single time we simplified data, we get better results than with overcomplicating the data. So I think that simplification of the product, simplification of the communication, of the user experience, of designs, everything inside the product and outside the product as well when it comes to communication is usually bringing best results.
Okay, and the second one, what products are currently the most successful, in Femtech, in your opinion?
So on the next screen, we actually have LV Trainer, definitely one of the most successful products in Femtech right now, as well as LV Pump, the silent pump, breast pump. There are several products like Clue that has been successful for a long while. I'm also going to refer to it in a minute. There are products that are more related to sex tech than to general health or to fertility. And they're also becoming more and more popular. Maybe not really more popular, but they are being treated more seriously right now. And they are getting better, they are improving for the women's needs. So I would say that if you want to follow some products on the market, sex tech for women is a very good area to track right now, to see what they're doing and how creative they're becoming with their ways of communication and optimization of the products. I think we don't have any other questions right now. So just quickly about forming a habit. This is another thing that I believe is mostly Femtech specific. I'm not saying that it's not important in the other applications, in the other products. So for example, if it's application for tracking your sports activity, forming a habit will also be important. But I would say that in Femtech, getting results, if they're related somehow to your product, the results is more oftentimes more inside your product, inside the Femtech product than outside. When it comes to tracking sports activity, it's outside of the product. So the product is just a tracker And it can help, of course, to form a habit, to do it on a daily basis, and then you will get the results. But the results are specifically related to what you're doing outside of the application for tracking your activity. And in Femtech products, a lot of times putting some information into like logging your daily mood or daily activity or something like that inside the product, or using the product, this is what gives you the results. So you don't really have to do anything outside of the product. But what I was saying before, what users need to create this habit is the instant gratification. We can say, hey, log your symptoms for period or generally the cycle on a daily basis for 3 months, and this way we will get enough information for you to personalize your experience and give you very relevant information about your health and your current mood. None of us would probably do it for 3 months daily if the gratification, if the reward is so far away. We would get bored, we would probably just forget about it. And that's actually what happens with most of the products where you have to track your daily activity or daily anything like diet, sport, or in this case, those are workouts with the LB trainer. But if you get something immediately, like you get some kind of very simple reward, and I'm not talking about gamification like getting a badge, users don't like it. And I think it's a huge, huge issue of a lot of Femtech products, that they're very childish and they're trying to be fun and they're trying to be decent in a way that they're covering what they're really about. If you look through period trackers, there are some on the market that are serious, that are straight about what they're doing, but there are still a lot of those with flowers and cats and pink backgrounds, and they do not use the word period, and that they try to avoid the subject. There is still this idea that the way women's body work is a taboo and we should not talk about it out loud. And I think a lot of women are very, very tired of it. And those kind of products, I would say, are not doing a great job in fighting this kind of taboo. And I'm not saying that it is a job of any or all Femtech products to fight it and to educate. Probably it isn't, but it's great that a lot of them do it. And luckily, those that do it are more successful usually. That wasn't exactly the subject of this slide, so sorry for that. But about the daily basis usage of the product, if you want to improve your product and it's a Femtech product, you probably need to at least consider if forming this kind of habit, whether daily habit or monthly habit, although monthly is very tricky. It's difficult to form a habit if it's something that is occurring so rarely. So you should consider if this is something that will be valuable for your users, if they log their mood or whatever daily, how they will, what value they will get from it. And talking about the value is one thing, but the other thing is this instant reward. And as an example, there is an application, it's a period tracker, Glow, by Eve, or Eve by Glow. Yeah, Eve by Glow, sorry for that. If you log anything there, they will give you not a badge, because that wouldn't really make any sense. Like, I'm not getting any reward by getting a badge, but they give me analytics. They give me data on how many of my, like how big is the percentage of my period twins, so-called. So people who are in the same, they have the same cycle, the same similar ways of experiencing the cycle. Did they, like, how many of them logged the same symptoms? So first of all, this is interesting for me because I'm getting the sense of, oh, okay, 90% logged the same symptoms, so I'm fine. It's nothing weird. It's not bad. But I'm also learning, and I'm learning to observe my body and to understand. So the next month, if I'm getting this kind of symptom, I already know that, hey, it's fine. So this is a very small thing that application is giving me, but as a receiver, I'm very, very grateful. And I'm also getting addicted of something like that because I'm getting a symptom. I want to log it just to check how it's working for others. And of course, you could give me this information in a form of an article saying that 90% of women in the third day of cycle log this and that symptom, but that wouldn't be as relevant to me as it is when I log it and then get instant information about it. Okay, so there's trust. I already said something about trust when we were talking about the analytics, but trust in femtech products has two sides. First is the security of data, which is extremely, extremely important. I'm sure that most of you heard about leaking data from sex tech applications, sex tech products, videos and stuff like that. People are genuinely scared of sharing their very, very personal health-related information, especially in the femtech products that is usually very intimate information, to share it if they don't know what's going to happen with it. So giving your users sense of security and of course making it secure is extremely, extremely important. And even if you would have just one simple feature, security is not something that you can put for later, like when you build a bigger product. It's a must from the very beginning. And the second issue related to trust is knowledge. You have to show your users that you can be trusted, not only from the security perspective, but also from the knowledge perspective. If I get an application, a product that is tracking my health, for example, or let's say fertility here, tracking my fertility, and I can't be sure that they know what they're doing and they have knowledgeable people on their side, I will not feel fine with sharing this information, and I will not feel fine with using this information. So giving your users a glimpse of your knowledge is actually in two ways very valuable for you and for your users. First of all, to build a trust that like we don't go usually, at least to doctors, to physicians if they're not real doctors. We trust them because we know they have knowledge, they have experience, they have paper to prove it, that they have this knowledge. And this is why we go there to ask them questions instead of asking the question to a random person on the street. And the same works for the products. If we know that someone behind the product has a knowledge and they can prove it to us in this product, it's a lot easier to trust the information that you give to your users. And this is also related to education. I think that education is also important in a lot of products, not just the femtech products. But some of the things regarding women's health may seem obvious, especially to creators of femtech products that are familiar with some of the issues. But we have to remember that a lot of those are not obvious, not only to teenagers, but very, very often to grown-up women, to women who already have kids. They are still not exactly sure how everything works in their body. So understanding, like letting your users understand how their body works, why things are happening, is extremely valuable in femtech products, in all digital health products, of course. But there is no way to teach people through an application about general health, about everything that happens in their body. But if we cut out just the issues that are related to cycles, to hormones, to gender-specific issues, we can explain it to the user. We can educate them on the way their hormones work, on the way sex is influencing their mood or their physical health. This is all something that I wouldn't say we as femtech creators are responsible for, but we have a chance to do it. We have a chance to better the world just a little bit here and educate people. So in education, I mean two things: understanding the value of your product, understanding why they should use the product and what will be the end value for them, and understanding their body. So learning by using the product what's happening, what might happen, what they should be worried and what they don't have to be worried about. So yeah, I think that when you're talking about improving the product, when you're thinking about it, those are the areas that you should focus on most. And first, I was talking more about the ways of generally improving digital products. But every time you're trying to make a decision about creating a new feature or creating a new product that is related to femtech in any way, ask yourself about those areas. What you can do in those areas exactly. Can you educate? Can you form a habit? Can you build trust? Can you use the data for the purpose of your users and not just your marketing? I think that this creates best femtech products. So this is all from me. Do we have any other questions?
Yes, we have one question. Do you think that femtech business can be separated from the mission?
I think it can, and I think it will at some point separate. But I think that right now is the time to strengthen the mission with the business. We still have so much to do in this field. And I'm not saying we have to, but if we can, why not use this chance? I would say that it's not necessary, but it's great if we can do something for the mission. Okay, so if we don't have any other questions, thank you so much for joining us. As Ella said, we will share the recording of the webinar with you. I hope it was valuable. I hope it gave you some insights to how to improve your products. And feel free to message us with any questions in the future.
Yes, I think it looks like we covered all the questions. Thank you so much for participating. We will share with you the recording, as Sarah said. And if you would like to talk about your ideas or ask any question, feel free to message us. Also, if you are interested in more detail about the femtech market and building successful femtech products, you can find it all in the State of Femtech ebook, which we will share a link to in the email. Thanks again for joining us today, and we will see you next time. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.